On this episode of Fangirl 2020X, Thunder isn't Chunder and Crack isn't whack. Please confiscate my microphone from me. So, last episode I decided I loaded up on too much Master System stuff, so I made a course overcorrection by getting some mainstream dinosaur crap, and it turns out the real 16-bit gems are overseas. Fortunately, that's 2 of the 3 games I'm looking at today. Crackdown was originally released in the arcades on Sega's Fairly Odd System 24 board. Other System 24 games include Hot Rod, Scramble Spirits, Gain Ground, and something called Dynamic Country Club. Honestly, the best way to describe this would be Gauntlet reconfigured for Schwarzenegger's America. The top half of the screen is taken up by a map and your ammo count, and the lower half is split into a screen per player, or if you're alone, an odd enemy Rolodex takes up the other square. Everything is basically a grid-like layout, and you've got to get to every X on the map to plant a bomb there, then exit off the right side of the map. You have 2 different guns, a rapid-fire one and a stronger, slower bullet, as well as a fun-to-use smart bomb which wipes all the other dorks off the map. Not only that, but you can slink along walls, which is a nice touch. It all comes together really well and just feels automatically fun. I know I mentioned this game once before, but there are little bits here and there that remind me of Ultra's NES Mission Impossible. The only catch? The game is so short. It's probably more brutal in the arcade, but once you reach the end, the game loops in the interest of building your score arcade style. I know I had that odd aside during Penguin Land, but this game is aching for a level editor. I mean, I compared it to Gauntlet, and Gauntlet 3 was made entirely of homebrew levels. Like I said, this whole thing is grid or tile based, and the main mechanic is seeking out places to plant bombs. It's a maze at heart. And imagine what a player could do with this game if they were in control. There's no doubt in my mind that a level editor would have turned this from an arcade game so obscure Sega threw it to a licensee to something that made you mutter "hell yeah" when you saw this video's title. Maybe someone someday can make a pseudo remastered version with the exact same graphics, vibe, and controls, and just make everything bigger and more involved. That would be sick. From my experience, the Japanese Mega Drive version runs cheaper than others, so just go with that, or fortunately, you can get it on Steam. So it's still kind of alive? Who knows, maybe you already bought it in some Sega bundle there or whatever and you already have it. That shit's always on sale. Lastly, I would be ashamed if I didn't show you the artwork from the Commodore version. Nice. Speaking of games that wound up being cheaper as imports, here's Thunder Force 2. The first Thunder Force only ever came out on the Sharp X1 and MZ1500, the NEC PC 6001 Mark II, PC 8801 Mark II, and PC 9801, and the Fujitsu Micro 7, or Fujitsu Micro 8 Junior if you're nasty. Thunder Force 2 was blessed with being a Genesis launch title in the US, and I can say without reservation that unless you were a baseball addict or a misery addict, it was the greatest of the games released that day. I think people assume Thunder Force is a side-scrolling shooter due to the prevalence of the later games, but this one ends up being a hybrid of the first and third Thunder Force games. You alternate between top-down free-roaming base bombing stages and high-action side-scrolling meat and potatoes stuff. People tend to rag on the overhead parts, but I honestly like them even when they piss me off. And holy shit, the underground city and cave stages are brain-withering. I can't seem to memorize any of that shit. But who cares when the game slaps like a barn door in a hurricane? I think I stole that from John Doran. Compared to the X68000 version, the Genesis one leaves out 2 stages, the Wasteland and the Abandoned Pipe, the latter of which some of you are probably dealing with in quarantine. There's enough shit going on that you won't miss 2 stages, and if you already own an X68000, you're probably only watching this video to find a reason to dunk on me. I would typically list off the weapon choices, but damn there's a ton, including the Nova weapon, which fires in the opposite direction of whichever way you're moving. I do not have the brain power for shit like that in a game like this. I have nothing but praise for this otherwise, but it just barely misses the heights of that Master System R-Type port. Regardless, this and Crackdown definitely made me start appreciating Mega Drive stuff more. A little side note on this next one. For whatever reason, Sega called the Master System version of SDI Global Defense in America, which is stupid and wrong. I'm assuming Sega ran afoul of Cinemaware, who got to that name a year prior. Nothing says the 80s like buildings that aren't there anymore. SDI, based on Sega's 1987 arcade game, is an update to Missile Command, sorta kinda. You flip back and forth between offensive and defensive stages. Offensive is a side-scroller, but your primary movement is your aiming reticle. You actually hold down a button to move your satellite. The overall goal, besides don't get blown up, is to not let too many missiles slip by. Once you're in the defensive stage, the Missile Command half kicks in as you keep the missiles off the planet below. If they slip by, the meter at the bottom fills. If it's full, everything is destroyed. The good news is you're a defense satellite, so you don't have emotions. If this seems overly simplistic, it is. But I think the always rock-bottom prices commands nowadays makes up for it. I'd say it's enjoyable for sure, but maybe not that addictive, and also a little hard on the thumbs. To be completely honest, they kneecapped the difficulty of this version compared to the arcade one to make up for the changed controls. The manual offers up a secondary method of control it claims is a two-player game. One controller steers, the other aims, and firing is automatic, but you can do it on your own with a controller in each hand. This is another game deemed worthy of the PS2 Sega Ages series. This shares Volume 21 with Quintet. Unfortunately, that came out after the Sega Ages series was handed off to M2, so there's a lot of polish involved. Not only that, but if you really enjoy this, there are plenty of other ports to mess around with. Go check out RetroCore's video on this, I'll post it in the description below. This is going to sound meaner than I intend it to be, but this is the ultimate $5 Master System game. I mean, it's fun. I played this longer than I ever did when I got the capture for this episode, but look at it this way. Gorf was Galaxian plus 4 other types of gameplay, and at its heart, Global Defense is Missile Command and one other thing. So yeah, don't rip yourself off, and you won't prevent this game from living out its destiny as a cheap thrill. That's all for now. Typically the phrase is like and subscribe, but subscriptions benefit this small potatoes fly-by-night channel a little more, so maybe go with that primarily later on. But this one ends up being a hybrid of the first and third Thunder Force games. Oh my god, you just said Thunder.